Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us in this webinar on wildfires and air quality today. I'd like to invite you to answer 3 short questions in order for us to know who's in the audience on your career level, your sector you're involved in, and also your relationship to the Arctic. Just starting it now. A warm welcome to you all for this exciting webinar. I'm Lisa Großfeld and I'm working for the Arctic Passion Project. And for those of you who have not heard about the project yet, we're working on improving the network of environmental observing systems in the Arctic. And to achieve this, we work together with Arctic communities, with scientific networks, and also decision makers. And yeah, more concretely, we're working on the coordinational structure of an integrated observing system in the Arctic. And we want to improve existing systems, but also develop new services. And also, yeah, with this all meeting the needs of the people in the Arctic, and with this also the larger society. With this Arctic Passion online seminar and dialogue series, we want to communicate our results and also have a platform to engage with a broader audience like today. And especially in this webinar, we intend to open for a dialogue with you and yeah, just talk about the developed services on wildfire and air pollution, and hear your perspectives on these, and especially also hear a perspective of the Indigenous Tahltan community. This online seminar and dialogue is organized by the Arctic Passion partners from the European Commission Joint Research Center and the National Research Council of Italy. And as I said, there are many chances for engaging in this webinar, and we would really like to know who's in the room today. That's why I would also invite you to write your name into the chat with a background and maybe a few keywords why you're here joining us today. And yeah, before I hand over to my colleagues for leading the webinar, I would like to say a few housekeeping notes. We'd love to see you and also welcome you to switch on your cameras in this meeting. At the same time, we want to make you aware that we are recording this webinar, as we have many friends and colleagues in many time zones that are also interested in this topic, and we want to record and make it accessible for them as well. The recording will be accessible on the Arctic Passion website. For you who are joining just now, we are welcoming your questions, and you can post them into the chat or also raise your hand after the presentations, so more towards the end of the webinar. And yeah, let me see if I already can see some results of the survey. So we have an even balance between early career and senior career professionals joining. Most of the attendees are involved in the sector of natural science, and the majority is working in the Arctic but not living there, although a high percentage is also in other areas, not living or working in the Arctic. So that's very interesting. And yeah, I would hand over to my colleagues now. Ilaria will go first, and we'll also introduce the other speakers, and very welcome to this webinar again.
Thank you, Lisa, and good morning and good afternoon to everyone, depending on where you're joining us. And welcome to this webinar on wildfires and air quality forecasting. My name is Laia Carti, and I'm a researcher at the European Commission Joint Research Center. And today I'll be talking and like to engage a discussion with you and with the other two speakers of this seminar, who are Vito Vitale, who he's a senior researcher at the Institute of Polar Sciences of the National Italian Research Council. And then we have Curtis Rattray, a member of the Talton Nation. He's an expert of capacity building and leadership development service, and he's joining us from British Columbia, Canada. So to warm up a little bit, we'd like to ask you some questions. And the first one is, where are you joining us from? So please take your smartphone or join us at slido.com and answer to this question. And we are having like an it's a real-time pool, so we'll see the answers straight away. So just wait a couple of minutes to see what happens. As now we just see North America, okay, Europe. Okay, we have 9 answers by now. Okay, so far Europe is leading. Okay, so I'll wait another 30 seconds, but right now we have, yeah, Europe and North America as major people joining, and then only a small part from European Arctic. Okay, super cool. So we have another question for you. As our webinar, we are going to talk about wildfires and air pollution. We'd like to know if you perceive those two topics as recurring issues in the area where you're living. Okay, so both seems to be hot topic in your area. So let's hope for more discussion later on, as everyone seems to be concerned about those topics. Okay, I guess we can start. Okay, so thanks for answering. And as it seems that most of you are concerned about wildfires and air pollution, let's move to our presentation. So first one will be my presentation. I'll be introducing you the AURORAE service, which is one of the services developed by the Arctic Passion Project. We are a team spread by the European Commission and the Italian National Research Council. And I'm going to show you our accessible air quality forecast for Arctic communities. So as I already said, the Arctic Passion Project involves the development of 8 Arctic services that are but aim to in some way provide climate and environmental information in a user-friendly way to people living in the Arctic. And today we are going to present you the Arctic Passion Service 4, which is the Integrated Fire Risk Management Service, or INFRA service, and our AS5, the Local Atmospheric Pollutant Forecast Service. So as most of you might know, air pollution is a critical problem nowadays because it's classified as the 6th leading risk factor out of 10 for worldwide death since for the 2019 statistics, and considering all the different compounds that make up air pollution. All those compounds could cause very adverse health effects. It could start from impacts on the central nervous system to irritation and inflammation on the breathing organs, and it could also lead up to cardiovascular disease, asthma, and other issues that could impact, for example, lungs or liver, spleen, and blood, and also causing problems on the reproductive system and also cancer. So it's a very, it's a huge burden, and it creates such tremendous adverse health effects that there are many restrictions and many recommendations from the World Health Organization to reduce the air pollution. In our service, we are focusing on PM10 for North Europe, and PM stands for particulate matter, and it's a complex mixture of solid and aerosols with a diameter which is smaller than 10 microns, which means that it's easily inhalable and gets into our body through our respiratory systems and go directly to the lungs, and it could have very very bad health effects, as I said before. So the WHO, the World Health Organization, in 2021 lowered the recommended annual and mainly and daily mean concentrations to protect our health. So nowadays the mean annual concentration, the recommended one, is 15 microgram per cube meter, and the mean daily one is 45 microgram per cube meter. And as you can see from this map on the right side, in Northern Europe, the concentration are lower in comparison to Southern Europe, but considering the lowering also of recommendations, most of the zones are however in the 20 to 40 microgram per cube meter, so in a concentration zone that is not considered safe by WHO. And especially if we focus on some of the stations, so some monitoring stations in Northern Europe, we have areas where the PM10 concentrations are not so low on yearly basis, because there are many high pollution events during the year, and this could be due to several factors depending on the stations. But we can take, for example, Akureyri, which is in northern Iceland, and this small town is very close to an airport, and then there are many ships coming to this small harbor. So even if we are in a very remote situation, the air pollution is there anyway, because there are many human activities, and the same goes for Tromsø in northern Norway. So also under the light of climate change and the exploitation of the Arctic, the situation is changing nowadays, because considering the retreat and the reduction of the area of Arctic sea ice, there is an increase in shipping activities in the Arctic Ocean, and also there are communities, for example, located in Northern Europe, whereas yes, in the Arctic areas of Northern Europe that are growing faster due to, for example, many activities such as mining and also offshore extraction of oil and gas. So considering both increasing activities in the Arctic, also air pollution is expected to grow. In addition, we have also the wildfire issues, and the number of wildfires in the EMAP region, so in the Arctic region, has grown in the past years. And we might remember last year's wildfires that happened in Canada, but also Russia and Siberia are pretty much affected. So the air pollution that comes from wildfires is also a growing matter of concern. So another question for you. So we'd like to know if you would find useful in your daily life to have a user-friendly tool that could provide you information on air pollution in the Arctic in case you are living in the Arctic or you're working on such topics. So please go ahead. I hope those 22 don't live in the Arctic. Okay, so we have 10 answers, 11. Okay, so it seems that so far 75% of the participants think that this kind of user-friendly tool would be useful in their everyday life. So, okay, so that's good because for our service, what we are doing is that even if, as I said before, we can consider that in Northern Europe, air quality is usually good, but there are some municipalities that are affected by PM10 concentration peaks that could be even higher than 50 microgram per cubic meter, and the sources of this pollution is usually very local, and it's point-wise and also related to seasonal activities. For example, home heating or student tires, cruises, wildfires, and also winter thermal inversion. So what we'd like to do with our service that we are developing is to improve two aspects of air pollution forecasting that is now available for the and provided by the European Atmospheric Monitoring Service. And both aspects are, the first one is the forecast performances, because this system that is called CAMS nowadays it generates high error on air pollution forecast versus the measurements that are made by in situ stations, and also this forecast service use only a limited number of monitoring stations for the simulation. And another key aspect is data accessibility, because to access the Copernicus Atmospheric Monitoring Service forecast, usually users need to download professional user format data, which are usually in GRIB or NetCDF. So the user need some kind of knowledge on modeling vocabulary and also technical knowledge on programming skills. And there is also an absence of a unique platform where people can access both near real-time data and air pollution forecast. So the aim of this service is to help to provide forecasts for mitigation of pollution, and also to help Arctic villages to be prepared for emergencies. And this will be done improving the forecast performances on the CAMS models using artificial intelligence, and also extend the data accessibility to all users. So this is how our web tool look like. It's a very simple web tool where we have a map on the right side for Northern Europe, and all the dots are represent the monitoring stations that we use for the forecast. And so the users can navigate this map on the right side and already check if on that day, so they can choose between near real time and the forecast on that menu on the left. So they can see if the air quality is considered good or moderate or unhealthy thanks to a legend on the left side. And they can navigate through the map, zooming in and zooming out. In addition, the users can go on the bottom panel and check the historical data. So once they select a specific station, then they can see the historical data of the pollution in that area, and also the data of the last week and the forecast. Then, if we once selecting station, also the users could see the name of the station code, so they can go back to the European Environmental Agency website to track the station, and then they can see as well the measured PM10, so it's almost near real time, and the forecast. As I said, there is a very intuitive legend, and also the users can get the data in a TXT format. So every day they will be able to download a daily bulletin for all the stations. So this bulletin will have the name of all the stations, their latitude and longitude, so they could locate the stations, and they will get the data for the daily average. PM10 concentration, and the forecast still a daily average for 1 day and 1 day and 2 day. Sorry, 1 day and the second day, so the following 48 hours. And this is a very light format that could be downloaded also with a slow internet connection. So to conclude, we wanted to create a tool that is made for both citizens and policymakers, as our tool improves the 2-day PM10 forecast for North Europe and for the European Arctic, is easily accessible by non-scientific users. And we hope that it will empower Nordic and Arctic communities on air quality topics, and also to better understand what are the effects on public health. And also we hope that it will help Arctic communities and also single citizens to take action in case of foreseen episodes of air pollution in their community. So thank you. And we have a last question for you on the AURORAE tool. So I'd like to ask you to type in if you think that what I've shown to you, if you see that there is something that is missing, or that you'd like to see in on our service. So please just type and your answer, and we'll show them on the screen. Okay, we have the first one, horizontal distribution within the city. Okay, so it's more local geographical distribution, but in this case, yeah, I can just say that sometimes we have just one monitoring station per city, so we can really see the distribution of pollution across the whole area of the city. But if we manage to get more data, we could do that for sure. Then I will wait a couple of other minutes. Okay. Okay. So maybe we can keep this for the questions later on in case. so we can continue with the other presentations. But it's super interesting, and we'll keep also track of information that we get. Okay, thanks a lot. And we will now move to wildfires, and we have another question for you. If you find useful in your daily life to have a user-friendly tool, in this case for wildfires in the Arctic. Okay, so we're getting, as before, we have very high percentage of yes. Okay, so I guess we can move now, thanks for answering, to our colleague Vito, who's going to present the infra service.
Okay, thanks, Ilaria. I will try to provide very briefly some insight and also show a video to which make an example, possibly, of what it can be, in which way can be used in front. The next slide, please. So you know that there is a lot of activity related to wildfires, a lot of services. People coming from Canada know very well the Canadian wildfires information services, etc. So why in Europe we have this global wildfires information service? So we have a lot of information. So why infra? The novelty and importance of infra, the attempt is try to give more relevance to the local dimension, and you will see, and try to develop information tailored on the user, the end user, and pay more attention to the no expert user. Meanwhile, many times the other services are devoted more to provide a lot of information, very important, but also they need a lot of expertise sometimes. So to simplify this, the next slide. So this like to be the target. The next, okay. So in some way, the infra like to be a system, then a service, then take information where whatever they are important, try to transform, integrate, and also simplify in such a way to reach the end user in a more friendly way and provide them information that can be managed more easily. This also means then eventually in this transformation, if you set in the right place the managing of the information, you can also introduce local information, and this can be an addition and a way to reduce the distance from where the information are produced and where the information need to be used at that. Okay, the next slide. So this just to give an overall scheme of the philosophy. So we like to reach different category or user from not expert to expert. This means to deal with a lot of different way to present the service. And for this, a level approach can be a very useful and friendly way to provide the service. In this way, you can have a level then more useful for non-expert user to have functionality and tools that can be used by very expert or people that need to manage the landscape, because also we have the knowledge of the wildfires, but also the responsibility with respect to the wildfires event then can be different. And the different level approach can help us to reach in the right way the different level or to be ready to answer to the needs of the different level of expert and management organization. Okay, the next slide. Okay, this is a video. Then now we show an example how the service can be eventually used using an example, an event occurred in the Northwest Territory of Canada in August 2023. Please.
An in-depth analysis of one or two specific events will help us establish practical uses of infra. Let's consider August 2023 and set the current date as August the 8th. By selecting any of the two layers for active fires, we can see very large areas that the satellites detect as hot and that most likely indicate active fires, also in the vicinity of INWIC, at a distance that must be carefully considered. If we zoom in, center the area well, and then use the measure function, we can estimate the fire distance to be about 20 kilometers. This approximate value tells us that the situation must be monitored carefully. Everyone knows about the fire due to smoke and reduced visibility, but through INFRA, each person can directly get news and follow the evolution independently. Information on active fires, as well as on burned areas, is updated every 3 hours. Always remember that this is certified information that comes from the GWIS public service. Thanks to the slideshow function, we can also try to get an idea of what happened in the previous days. It is possible to save the screenshot and the situation of August the 8th or of the previous days using the export map function, which allows you to save the screenshot locally as a graphic file in PNG format. This file is saved in the download folder of the computer from which you are connected. At this point, the user needs to understand what could happen in the following days. How can INFRA help him? Let us shift our attention from the layers that are linked to active fires and burned areas to risk information. In addition to having a picture of the current situation and of what happened in the previous days, we can also have an idea of the future evolution up to 8 to 9 days ahead, the limit of weather forecasts used to calculate these risks. Now let's move from active fires to fire weather index. We reduce the zoom level to gain a good view, since these layers have a spatial resolution of 8 kilometers. We choose a suitable period, for example from July the 20th to August the 16th. If we follow the evolution of the FWI, we can see that after August the 10th and 12th, there's a marked decrease across the entire area. This trend is also confirmed by observing the other risk indices. If we focus on the risk of ignition caused by lightning, we can also see that this risk practically disappears after August the 10th. Seeing that from August the 10th there's a significant reduction in the risk level can comfort us in the idea that the evolution of this fire can be positive and the situation improve. Indeed, this is what happened in reality.
Okay, you can stop, Ilaria. I would like just to specify that this is just the last part of a much broader tutorial where all the functionality and the meaning of the information layer is provided. So this will be on this web page. You can find all access to the service and also information we are now improving and complete to insert all the information. So at the end, you will find this tutorial. There is in total roughly 20 minutes where try to explain, and this level 0 is the level for no user. This level is free available, and the information come from the global Wildfires information service. Is a global service developed by United Nations in cooperation with the European Commission. But this is only one source of information. The service can eventually introduce other information depending on the agreement or disposability. So it's not very complicated to introduce. So it's a potentiality. So the idea is just to present a short potentiality, just to raise a discussion and see in which way. In other level, you can have a transformation. If you have an expert looking at the situation, the information can also, the service also provide a tool to transform this information in a textual message. So in a message, then you can make in a channel, in a social channel, cell phone, SMS. So there are many ways to distribute this information. So the information from graphical and GIS information can be transformed in a textual message that normally is the way in which many services and many users of different level of knowledge can be easily reached and informed. So there are many possibilities, and this was just to leave a point. So this is from INFRA. Thank you.
Thank you, Vito. So now we have another quick question with our tool. So what would you like to see, or do you think is missing from this very short video that Vito provided us regarding on the infra tool? Maybe the video was too short, but we'll get your suggestions, and maybe we can go through them later on. So I'll just, covering the rest of Canada. Then maybe we can talk about it later after our last presentation. But okay, thank you for answering. And the next presentation will be from our other third speaker, who's Curtis Rattray. So hi, Curtis, and I'll leave the floor to you.
Hi. So I'm going to talk about Tahltan wildfire and air quality issues within our territory. The traditional name for our people is Keyaho Dene, which basically means country town people, because we lived on the land, and we traveled on the land to different locations, and for salmon fishing in the summer and hunting in the fall time and trapping in the winter and that type of thing. So myself, these are the types of topics I'm going to talk about. I'll just do an introduction of myself, and then I'll talk about Tahltan territory and our nation, and I'll talk about historic wildfires, wildfire issues and air quality issues, and then I'll talk about the needs. Next. So my Tahltan name is Nethglenats. It refers to the ground after the caribou have walked on it. My English name is Curtis Rattray. I'm Tahltan on my mother's side and Scottish on my dad's side. The Tahltan were matrilineal, so that means we follow our mother's side of the family. So we never had any family names. So people would see Nethglenats and they would know that it's Crow, because that's the clan of my mother, and I follow her, my mother's side of the family. And they'll also know that it's Nalakotin, which is the tribe that I'm from. So we're the northwest corner of Tahltan territory and the Taku River watershed. And I live in Takla, which in Tahltan means head of the lake. So the colonial name is Dease Lake. Next. So the Tahltan Nation consists of between 5,000 and 6,000 people of Tahltan ancestry. It's interesting because we've been saying that for probably 20 years. Nobody really knows. We haven't really had the opportunity to, do a proper population count. We have 3 communities, Iskoot, Telegraph Creek, and Dease Lake. They are all roughly about the same size. Dease Lake is a little bit bigger, but Telegraph Creek is probably about 250 people. Iskoot is about 300, and Dease Lake is about 350 people. Dease Lake is a more integrated community. There's a lot more non-natives living within Dease Lake than in Telegraph Creek or Iskoot. We have 2 Indian Act bands. Slip back, please. We have 2 Indian Act bands, the Tahltan band and Iskut band, and then we have the Tahltan central government. We're unique in the sense that our tribal government is not under the Indian Act policies and procedures. Our membership of the Tahltan central government is any person of Tahltan ancestry. Typically, it is band councils that are the members of these tribal governments. So we're different in that way. We also structure our government based on family representation, which is more of in line with our traditional government system. Next, please. So this is Tahltan territory. You can see that it is within the northwest part of British Columbia. So our western boundary, we use the Alaska BC boundary as our western boundary, and it extends north into the Yukon. And it basically consists of the Stikine watershed and all the surrounding headwaters. Next, please. So Tahltan territory is almost 94,000 square kilometers. It's a little over 10% of BC is what we're claiming. And it's the Stikine River watershed, and the surroundings headwater starting in the northwest is the Whiting River, the Taku River, the Yukon River, the Mackenzie, Skeena, Nass, and Unuk rivers all originate in Tahltan territory. So no one is upstream from us, everybody's downstream. And you can see some of the numbers of the glaciers and dormant volcanoes, and we're very biodiverse. There's 8 distinct biogeoclimatic zones. So there is, in the south and western portions of our territory, there's temperate rainforest, and then in the rest of the territory is boreal forest. Next slide, please. So some of the historic wildfires, this photograph is on the banks of the Stikine River, and this is looking eastward. It's looking southward. And this is our most recent large fire is 2018. The community of Telegraph Creek was evacuated, and we had about 17 homes that burned in Telegraph Creek, and a whole bunch of other outbuildings. Next, please. So this is the extent of that wildfire. From the point in the bottom left corner of the fire, which is in the pink, you can see the community of Telegraph Creek is in that area. And then towards the north, or up to the top right-hand corner of the photograph, it's about a 50-kilometer length of that part of the fire. So it gives you an idea of the extent of that fire. Sorry, I can't remember how many hectares that fire was. At the same time, you could see in the bottom right-hand corner, there's the Claslene River fire or Buckley Lake fire. So that was also going on at the same time. And if you look kind of in the center bottom of the picture, you'll see a lake, the Buckley Lake. We had a number of youth out on Mount Zaidza, which is just to the bottom of the picture, to the south of there, when that fire in the community was evacuated. And I'll show you some of the photographs from that vantage point in a bit. Next slide, please. So here's an example. This is from a BC provincial website, and this gives you an idea of the extent of the historical wildfires. It only goes back to about 1954, 57, if I remember correctly. But all the hashed portions are here. It gives you an idea of the extent of the wildfires in the territory. Big Raven Plateau is where these photographs were, the vantage point of these were in the center of the photo, and we're kind of looking northwards and northwestward. You can see off to the northwest from Big Raven Plateau is Telegraph Creek. Next slide, please. So here's a view from Mount Zaidza looking north. This is the direction where the fire is coming from. So you can see the extent of the smoke that was being generated from this fire. Another picture, another shot of that. This photograph is just showing the edge of that smoke from up on Mount Zaidza. And then here's another one that's kind of looking towards the northeast. So this is almost looking directly in line behind these mountains and other mountain ranges where Dease Lake is at. So most of the smoke is, Dease Lake was in the path of a lot of this smoke because we have westward prevailing winds that come from the westward prevailing winds in this area. And then off to the right-hand side of the picture is the direction where you go towards Iskoot. And we're about 50 kilometers from Iskoot. Here is a picture of Telegraph Creek after the fire. And you could see the along the right-hand side of the community is where you can see the forest, and that's where most of the damage was done in regards to homes being lost. And then off and towards the center, the top of the picture is where a lot of the homes were also destroyed, was in that area there too. Next. So some of the wildfire issues, the air quality in Telegraph Creek and Dease Lake for this specific fire were really bad. Telegraph Creek was evacuated, but Dease Lake had a lot of the smoke come into the community, and I'll talk a bit more about that in a bit. But some of the other issues is the impact on our traditional hunting and gathering activities, particularly around Telegraph Creek because of the extent of the fire. A lot of the forest was burnt around the community, so the wildlife evacuated the area for a while. So that was one of the issues from there. The other thing is flooding washed out the road into Telegraph Creek and a number of the streets within the community of Telegraph Creek a number of years later, and I'll talk more about that in a bit. But what was happening is the groundwater couldn't absorb the snow melt because the soil was just like clay as a result of the wildfire. And I've been into the fire after the forest after the fire and after rainfall and stuff like that, and the clay just the soil just sticks to your boot, and it didn't allow to me it looks like it didn't allow the water to penetrate into the soil, so it just sat on top of it. And because of that, the water then pooled up and then it flowed down, causing a washout. And next slide, please. So this is, you can see the extent of the washout. There's only one road into Telegraph Creek. So this was in 2021. This created isolation for the community of Telegraph Creek for about 5 days. So it washed out half of the road here. You can see how much is actually gone. Next slide, please. Here's the aerial view of it. You can see all of in the center of the photo is all of the rock that they dumped in there to repair the road. And you could see the V-shaped ground right above the road. That's where all that water was coming from. And you could see on the top of the picture, the burnt forest and the hillside and stuff like that. So all of that water kind of got funneled down into that V-neck draw and washed the road out. Next. So the Telegraph Creek was evacuated on August 5th. We were up on Mount Edzidza at that time, and we watched all of that smoke when I showed you guys the photos. The return home was November 15th. A lot of the community members didn't return until much later. The communications within the community of Telegraph, Dease Lake, and Iskoot, there's limited internet services. There are no cell phone coverage. Though a lot of Tahltan people have cell phones, and a lot of them are using Wi-Fi calling and stuff like that nowadays. So that's improved that communications portion of things. And then the Tahltan Band has an emergency management department now. Iskoot Band does, and they've been trying to fireproof, especially Iskoot. They've been trying to fireproof their community now. Next. So some of the air quality issues, there's legacy issues, and I'll get into a little bit more of that in a bit down on this slide. Golden Bear Mine, for example, is 100 kilometers north of Telegraph Creek. They had air quality monitoring stations. and they were using cyanide as a way of extracting the gold from the ore. And then they were using carbon, like coconut shells, to extract the cyanide and the gold that was attached to the cyanide. And the carbon would attach that cyanide and the gold, and then they would burn off the carbon, and that's how they ended up with the gold out of the ore deposit. So that's one of the issues. And there's been no long-term monitoring of that. We have no idea of what any kinds of air quality issues that were arising around that from that air quality monitoring. The mine has been closed since 1994. Some of the other legacy issues around air quality is traditional activities like campfires. Many Tahltans still cook around the fires, cooking moose head, for example. And drying salmon and moose meat requires smoke. So still a lot of Tahltans are catching salmon and drying salmon in June and July. And the smoke is used to keep the flies and the bugs off of the salmon while it dries from the air and the wind and that type of thing. And then the other thing is there are a few people who still continue to tan moose hide and caribou hide, and that requires smoking. My grandmother did that, for example. Also, many homes are heated with wood stoves. And then there's the other issue around toxic persistent organic materials are transported to the north from sources in the south. These are issues that they've taken some kind of, they've became popular issues that were trying to be discussed in because of scientific reports that were finding higher concentrations of these toxic materials in the Arctic. And when I talked with some people about this, some scientists, they talked about this idea of leapfrogging, and that they came down into the earth from the atmosphere because of rain is what they figured. And so there's this, that's what they call this leapfrogging of these toxic materials heading to the north. Next. So air quality issues, Dease Lake in 2018, the smoke was so thick that visibility in Dease Lake was down to about 500 meters. Going outside, I ended up with a headache within minutes of being outside, so I didn't go outside very often. I don't know if there's an air quality advisory, because when Telegraph Creek was evacuated, we're up in the mountains. We came back to the smoke. The smoke was so bad that the plane that was to come get us, the float plane that was to come get us, couldn't take off because of the visibility issues with the plane around Dease Lake. And then I left Dease Lake after the next day or 2 days of being in Dease Lake. I left. But I don't think people needed air quality at that time. I don't know what air quality was like prior to us coming out of the mountains, but when I got there, there was really serious air quality issues. Next. So the needs of the Tahltan territory, I think we need more research into the needs and the options available in regards to how do we monitor and collect information and data, and what's the best option for the community. I think we also need to have air quality monitoring stations right in the community. And then we need to find linkages to an early warning system for our membership. And then we need to find ways of getting that information to each of the households. And we need to look at wildfire predictive models before in the early season planning and stuff like that, so people will be aware of wildfire issues potentially around their communities. At the beginning of each season would be good. I think it would really motivate some people to fireproof their property and their homes and the Indian reserves. And I believe that's it.
Yes. Thank you, Curtis, for your presentation. It was super interesting, especially all the pictures, but really connect the two topics. And also from your point of view of, you know, someone who has experienced this in the last years. So I guess here, this is just before we go to the questions. Here, this is another more complete survey that you can take later on. So you can just save the screenshot of this QR code and take a little bit longer survey on both air qualities, our air quality service, and wildfire service. So please get back to it when you have time and try to answer our questions so we can improve our services. So I guess now we can move to an open discussion, and we can maybe start from a couple of questions that we got in the chat, and then we can move to more open discussion, and also I will be also asking Curtis to give us some feedbacks or some comments as he experienced both air pollution and wildfires in Arctic area on first person. So I'm looking at the chat, and so let me check. Okay. I don't see some particular questions here, so maybe we can start. Also, people in the also participants can raise their hand if they want to talk directly, or they can just type a question in the chat. And in the meantime, maybe yeah, if Curtis wants to maybe start putting some thoughts on the table, we can start with our chat.
Can I make a comment, Ilaria,
Yeah,
if there are no raised
sure.
hands? Just following what the list of items on needs from the Tartan side, and then Curtis was putting, is just to specify. It's obvious then the services we are developing move more in the line to provide a better communication, to improve communication and information. No, and of course, and try to reach the end user, no expert user, giving the information that can be tailored and useful for the system. In specific, infra like to give the problem is then sometimes when you are in a you have two issues. The first is try to increase awareness of the people, and this means then not only there is together with a natural risk, there are some risks that come from human activity, and so to increase awareness about the situation, the risk of vegetation can burn, or the risk then natural ignition can be started, can become useful to help the people to be more efficient in manage the landscape. And also the problem is that to introduce the information and come, because I know that in communities was for centuries manage the landscape in such a way, because wildfires is not a problem rising now, and sadly. The second point is when an emergency occurs, the emergency system normally are far away and also are engaged to extinguish the fire, to work against the fire, and they have a limited time eventually to deal with information. And the information is very broad, very general, no? And so the service is an attempt to give to the people the idea to collect some information using the huge amount of information at disposal to be able to give to have a better idea what is occurring, which can be the tendency. The Inuvik example I made, I was able to understand that then the people was 7 days living in a sort of pre-evacuation status. So they need to be ready to evacuate anytime. 7 days is a long time. It's a stressful situation, and not too many information. One post, Facebook post per day for the Northwest Territory Service. The municipality, of course, was doing the best, but also limited. So it's the attempt is since there are a lot of information, and help the people to understand more and collect some idea of what is going on, and also transfer this information in the personal perspective, because any people can have a different interest or idea or needs than a general message can not provide. And so this way, so the attempt is to try to bring information more near to the people in a way that the people can more easily use for the specific scope than they can have. This can occur at the individual level, at the level of community. So this was, and the same I believe is for the service related to high quality. And we are working to also, the important is try to, and this what collected in this webinar seems to confirm that it's very important to join the information about the wildfires with information of the pollution that wildfires can produce, and in general the air quality issue together. So to work more to have in the same place information on the two topics can be very relevant for the people. At the moment, it's very difficult to find. You need to reach completely different sources for the two items, and this can become, of course, for a person very complicated. So the attempt is to move in this direction, increase communication, and increasing communication, increase awareness of the people and knowledge of the problem and the question. The issue you raise sometimes are very much more in the research area. To modeling wildfires or a seasonal forecast for wildfires is very complicated. It's very challenging at the moment.
Yeah, I think to me the challenge is the input information into the system and how accurate that information is. And I think, just reading some of the information from the chat this morning, with Clarion talking about other sources of information. BC government will have information around forest fires and air quality. Government of NWT Northwest Territories will have information. Yukon government will have information. And so how do you kind of find a place to input all of this information and come out with some kind of predictability around fires? And how do you get that information out into the communities? With our communities, on the reserves, for example, you could just go around and walk from house to house, and you could have that information shared in just by walking around in an hour or something like that, right? Because of the size, they're so small and they're so close together. But the other thing is using the social media and other types of technology to get information out is another way of speeding it up, the process. And you'll notice that in our communities, we call it moccasin telegraph, for example, is that that's another way of getting the word out pretty quick, because they'll phone and talk to their relatives and the word will spread quite quickly that way. So the traditional ways of communicating is just as effective in a lot of communities as using the technology.
Yeah, the infra service offered that we use a platform that was developed in Italy to disseminate through social media, cell phone, and other information, mainly textual information, or you can also share some images if you like to use. Even the platform give you, if you use the possibility to make a simple command. For example, if you like to switch off the power, somewhere, if you implement, you can even reach, and provide with a phone there, for example, give a signal, and the phone can activate a relay to switch off the power if you like to remove the electricity, in case of risk, in a place far away then it's difficult to reach, or something like that. And so there are many possibilities. And the starting platform was a platform used in the civil protection at the national level. We are operating with a company then is heavily engaged with the issue about the civil protection, and so we are using as a base a platform then is is in some way was developed to manage some emergency situation. And but then the real possibility need to be discussed. But just to raise, then the main scope of this service is to improve information, and so what is important is to understand which sort of information and which way to communicate, transfer this information is considered useful by the communities, by the people, by the end user at the end, because this is the main scope of this service. Unfortunately, we have no the capability to manage the wildfires. So the air pollution issue are so big, so large, and there are so many efforts. It's very will be very ambitious, very no sense to consider our little capability able to manage objective and target, then are engaged so many people, so many organizations, and so many resources. We have a little group in a little project with respect to the money spent by Canadian government and agency to manage the wildfires. Can you imagine if we can make a, but so the attempt of us was to move in the direction, and sometimes is not too much considered, how to improve the last mile. Then of course people engaged with the emergency are looking this last mile as the last, not the relevant, but not so relevant, like to work against the event or etc. And so, okay, we can do something a little bit better. We hope to have started a good road, but of course we need the inputs by the user to understand if the road is correct and how to improve this road to make it really useful the service. So, but just to explain better the scope.
Okay.
And frame better.
Thank you, Vito. I would like to ask if some of the participants want to ask a question, or they want to unmute themselves and ask a question directly to you or to Curtis or to me on that topic. Otherwise, we can have a quick look on the results of the Slido here. Also, I would like to ask you and to Curtis, what regarding those answers on what is missing in INFRA. So here we have smoke tracking and covering the rest of Canada. So I'd like to first ask Curtis what he thinks about, what he thinks that is maybe missing, or but he'd like to see on the INFRA tool, and maybe then we can discuss a little bit about it. And so Vito says that
I was the one that put I was the one that put the smoke tracking in when.
Okay.
Yeah, because when we were looking at the video and they were showing the actual fires and stuff like that, I thought it'd be really nice to be able to track the smoke too. So I don't know if that the satellite's able to pick up that kind of information or not, but I think that would be interesting to see where the direction of the main smoke is blowing and direction is going to, right? Because that's the talking about the prevailing wind, and that's really the direction that the fire is going to end up burning towards anyway, right?
But if you follow the concentration, for example, so if you provide information about the concentration and see how the concentration change along the days, for example, of the slideshow, you can have an idea of the direction of the smoke are taking, for example. So there are ways to, so considering the needs, and if we considering what we can have at disposal, for sure there are possibility to develop a product that can reach the needs and transfer the information in a useful in such a way can answer the specific question. So now we can taking to tracking the smoke is for sure an element, no, Ilaria, and we can consider and we can work on this,
because that's a big issue. I mean, that I think that's what really caused the fire to take off, right? I mean, that's one of the things that I've noticed in regards to the work that I'm doing in climate change around here is the increase in wind velocity and wind storms. And I've been going out to Buckley Lake quite a bit, and that day we got down to the lake, I've never seen the lake receive such wind as it did there. And that's what really caused the fire to take off too, right? So wind and is a really important indicator of fires, and I think part of the forecasting, especially once the fire gets going, where it's going to end up, and the predictability and the speed that it's going in.
But for example, for the Copernicus products about the concentration, there are forecasts for the next 2 or 3 days. Generally, is longer is difficult because the wind is complicated, is challenging parameter. So make really you are difficult to obtain, but there are products developed at the research level by the service like Copernicus, for example, in Europe, then cover the whole globe. They can provide information at least for 24 or 48 hours, up to 72 is something possible. So we are working on that. We are discussing with Ilaria, the group, the colleagues in INFRA and our group in CNR, how to integrate better this information. But for example, we are collecting the signal. Then this is a very promising, very useful, and can be a very promising, interesting development. So integration of the service and combination of the service, and your for example, your indication about the smoke tracking is one for sure important on which we can work, and to understanding which way to produce something useful.
Yes.
And for example, the infra platform is offered this, the development infra was very weather forecast oriented. I'm an atmospheric physicist, so in some way, so normally when you see the weather forecast, normally, if you look the last days and see the clouds, the movement of the clouds, even from the satellite images, you can gain from a qualitative point of view a lot of information. And if you are able to read these images, you can understand and provide a lot. So always consider then a combination of the information, eventually an expert then make collection and can reach the end user with tailored messages. This can be a very useful input, or eventually you can produce products then automatically can give a feeling. But always is one aspect is educate the people to read the information, understand the information, and take from this information a personal opinion or a personal perspective of what is occurring. This is always very important, not only to look what are the information from the services, but also try to understand from yourself, because you are the best person to respond to your needs, for sure. This is no doubt. This means also then use continuously this can educate you and make more cautious, comportamenti, we say in Italian. Okay, this is to have a much better habit in work, in making issue, in making the cooking or preparing something to our quality, or to pay attention to the signal in respect to wildfires, etc., etc. So this is one aspect. The education, outreach, and awareness is very important.
Yes. So thank you, Vito, again. And I would like maybe to conclude to a couple of also to ask Curtis, maybe we can comment a little bit on this slide when where we can, maybe you can say something what you think that is missing or you'd like to see in the air quality forecast tool. And maybe I'd like to know if you put one of those comments and yeah, we can discuss briefly about it before going to the end, towards the end of our webinar.
Yeah, I think Vito was talking about that coverage of the greater area of the Canadian Arctic and Alaska can be
Yes.
achieved.
Yeah.
So that's not
Mhm.
not a big problem. And I think I'm not an IT person or anything like that, but I think interactive map and stuff like that would be really I think some of the local observations and things like that, and how can local people include their information and data into the website, I think would be an interesting thing that we need to explore. And I think
Yes.
you can get much more live information that way, right?
Yeah.
Yeah,
That would be super interesting, and we were thinking about it. But so, first of all, we need to
yeah.
consider that we have some technical limitations because we can't, we have to in some way encrypt so we can't track the people that use our web service for privacy reasons. So the thing is that I was thinking to set up is a simple email address where people can type in if they are experiencing some air quality issue in their area or they want to share their story. And that's what we can do, because the thing is that for our service we need reliable information, especially reliable data. So in our case, we use the European Environmental Agency data. So we can't use any kind of data that are produced like from like local people that use their sensors and so on, because we are not calibrated. So we don't know if the data are good or not. But what we can do is trying to create like an interactive tool so that people can, could be simply a mailbox, but they can share information with us, and we can take this information and try maybe to turn them in stories, or it could be, or they could be useful for us to improve the service or take into account other aspects that maybe we haven't considered yet. And please,
about
Vito, go ahead.
infra, Curtis, we was focusing on level 0 because it's the open to all the people, is free, because but if you like to transfer and send messages, this means to have some rights to do this, because it's not authorized. We don't like to make services that overimpose what is the landscape management of the agency or the body managing the issue. It's just an additional information that the people can use. But I ask you to focus on the level 1 and level 2, where there are functionality, then people then can have the permission to share information, can eventually use for also to introduce local information eventually. So are there the functionality? Level 0 is a sort of web service, and any people can approach and look information. What is important, these information are certified and coming from the public area. This is very important.
Yeah,
so the information
I think,
are correct.
Okay, I think it's really important with the air quality thing, and particularly for our elders, because I talked about the legacy issues around air quality and their lifestyle and stuff like that. So we've got a lot of elders who do have breathing issues, and so it's really important that we have a good air quality monitoring and predicting model and communicate out to the communities about air quality so that they can take preventative measures.
Yes, yeah, as we were saying before for the wildfires as well, I think that a tool like ours or a similar tool would be helpful for them to be more aware of of some behavior that maybe are not so healthy, like cooking, indoor cooking with fire, with burning wood. That is a traditional way of cooking, but unfortunately is not so healthy. So yeah, I think this, yeah, I understand that disrupting a habit is always painful, but sometimes it's the only way to move towards more healthy and sustainable habits for everyone. So providing those people this information, I think it's really important. And maybe it could be also that as these kind of tools are more technological kind of tools, maybe young people, this is then a different step, but maybe young people can talk with older people saying, you know, that's a thing that we should change, or you know, that's a very unhealthy habit. So maybe the tool won't reach elderly people, but maybe they would reach younger people that are the nephew or niece of those elderly, and could help to, you know, pass the information. Okay. I don't know if we have other questions from the audience. So if we don't, I think, I don't know if Curtis has some final remark. Otherwise, I would like to thank Curtis and Vito and all the people who stayed until now in this webinar. And yeah, thank you for listening and for also providing us super nice suggestions. And you have our contacts, Vito and mine contacts, and Josephine has just put in the chat link to the survey and to both our services if you want to have a look at them. And please reach out and ask questions or keep in touch with us if you want to, yeah, to talk to us and collaborate also. So,
and please disseminate information about the survey in such a way we can collect as much as possible information.
Yes. So thank you, everyone. So, and have a nice evening or have a nice rest of the day, and we'll keep in touch. Thanks also, Lisa, for organizing the webinar.
My final comments were about the elders and stuff. So, and thanks for everyone for listening and contributing. I appreciate it. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care.
Bye. Thank you very much for joining, everyone.
Bye.
Ciao. Ciao a tutti.